Courtesy of Bevan, VK5BD's ATV channel and YouTube channel, VK1WIA National News, Wireless Weather and Radio Sport is next. Then we're back, live and local news, and your voice, your say, it's radio callback time.
From Australia, this is the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Hey, g'day, it's Graham, VK4 Baker with the November 14 edition of National News from your VK1WIA, the Wireless Institute of Australia. Joining us, Peter, VK4EA, with some updates from the WIA board, Lee, VK3GK, and the WIA meets with ATMA, Roger, VK2ZRH, WIA's Editor-in-Chief of Amateur Radio Magazine, and Trent, VK4TS, Manager, WIA's Ross Hole Contest. Plus lots more news you can trust, news without the editorial spin.
G'day, this is Peter, of VK4EA, with some updates from the WIA board. No doubt everybody is enjoying their new 2x1 call signs. The activity level during the CQWW contest was encouraging. And for those holding back on applying, there are plenty left, so get into it. The AMC website has all the details you need to progress your application. The board wishes to thank all clubs and individuals that helped out at the JUDA event during October, held throughout the country. The effort is very much appreciated. I've started an IT systems review for the WIA. I'm looking for volunteers with IT skills to help out with the WIA IT committee. Email me at vk4ea@wia.org.au if you're able to assist. I'm very much looking forward to the Dick Smith interview with Hayden later this month. VK7HH from Ham Radio DX. Dick's upcoming autobiography should be a ripping read. Any photos relating to radio activities are appreciated for our Instagram feed. Check the text edition for the links. And did you know the WIA has a Twitter account? We do our best to post news and events, and there are regular retweets from our partner organisations, clubs and individuals. Again, check the text edition for the link. And finally, I hope to make some contacts during the upcoming spring VHF-UHF field day. We need to use our higher bands, so please consider giving out some numbers, and most importantly, please put in a log. Cheers for now. This has been Peter, VK4EA, on behalf of the WIA board.
Good morning from Lee Moyle, VK3GK, WIA Vice President. WIA meets with ACMA. During October, the WIA met with the ACMA to discuss several important topics, including the new class licensing proposals, how the ARPANSA, Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency, criteria of EMR compliance will integrate with the potentially new amateur licensing structure, some of the finer points of the 2x1 call signs, and the FYSO, the 5-year spectrum outlook, and the effects it will have on the amateur radio community long term. ACMA welcomed the opportunity to meet with the WIA and were accepting that the previous very detailed submissions on amateur licensing arrangements provided the ACMA with significant detail and knowledge to consider. With respect to amateur licensing arrangements, ACMA advised that the submission to the ACMA authority was almost complete and would go forward shortly. The next step, once approved, is to proceed with a response to submissions and suggested steps going forward. This was most likely to occur January-February 2022, and a busy time for both WIA and ACMA. ACMA advised that the update on changes for the amateur service related to the ARPANSA EME standard, ACMA would consist of the intention to lift the current requirements for the apparatus LCD into the new regulatory framework. There is no intention to impose any additional burden on the amateurs. WA finds this as an exceptionally positive approach, as any changes would entail a large educational requirement and that education in this area would be a necessity anyway. The 2x1 contest call signs have been a great success, and ACMA is not considering imposing any further operating conditions. It will be up to the amateur community to come to a consensus that is reflective of the international view of contesting criteria and appropriate use of the 2x1 contesting call signs. ACMA mentioned that they are working on the assignment process for assignment of repeater and beacon apparatus licences. It was acknowledged of the WIA's role in international band plans. Discussions with ACMA and other parties are ongoing, with the WIA developing a framework document for comment as a way of progressing to a suitable arrangement. The outcome and discussions were very robust, and the WIA thanked the ACMA for scheduling the WIA into their very busy schedule. A full report will be released shortly on the WIA website. Stop press. First official use of 2x1 contest call signs. Monday the 1st of October 21, with the CQ Worldwide SSB contest now over, it was great to see so many new contest call signs being used for the first time, along with many new contesters trying out this competitive facet of amateur radio. The responses from the international contest community was varied from, "What is the rest of your suffix?" to "Great to hear VK now has contest call signs." 3 of your WIA directors, who are also active contesters, have 2x1 contest call signs. Did you manage to log one of them over the weekend and were unaware? If you participated in the CQ Worldwide contest and used the 2x1 call sign, please submit your contest log to the CQ Worldwide contest log upload link for collation, https://www.cqworldwide.com/log-check. You may even win a prize in a section. The WIA would like to hear your thoughts on the use of 2x1 contest call signs. Please send your comments to nationaloffice@wia.org.au and we will collate and present them to our readers and listeners in the near future. That's all from me. 73 is from Lee Moyle, VK3GK, WIA Vice President.
This is Editor-in-Chief of Amateur Radio Magazine, Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH. Earlier this week, the files for issue 6 were uploaded to the printer's server. The magazine was delivered to the mailing house at the end of the week. It will be with the retail distributor this coming week for delivery to newsagents. So, the latest edition of Amateur Radio Magazine, the last for 2021, will be with you from this coming week. The good folk at Australia Post will work hard to get it to you, I'm sure. While I have your attention, thank you to those readers who completed our reader survey, which ran through September and closed on the 22nd of October. We have early results. When this issue lands in your hands, you will find them on page 17. Well, what else is in store for readers in issue 6? The theme for this issue is Antennas and Propagation. We have articles on both home and portable antennas. Phil Waite, VK2ASD, explores the performance of his half-square wire antenna for 40 metres, while Ben Broadbent, VK5 Baker, reveals how to build a steady-eddy portable squid pole mount for easy single-person deployment. Propagation-wise, Simon Rumble, VK2VSR, gives us the skinny on monitoring space weather online, while our VHF-UHF columnist, David Minchin, VK5 Kilo, reveals some fascinating details on microwave propagation via evaporative ducting, along with recent investigations into aircraft scatter. Likewise, our meteor scatter columnist, Dr. Kevin Johnson, VK4 Uncle Henry, fleshes out the mechanics of meteor scatter propagation and the ways and means of successfully exploiting it. Here's one area where smaller is better. That refers to antenna systems. For the constructors amongst you, Lou DiStefano, VK3AQZ, continues his HF antenna tuner project, which was held over from issue 5. And further, the indefatigable Jim Tregellis, VK5JST, presents a digital readout VSWR and RF power meter project that covers all amateur bands from 160 to 6 metres and powers up to 250 watts PEP. Coincidentally, the series on Unravelling the Mysteries of Connecting Radios to Antennas by Dr. Brian Clark, VK2GCE, continues apace. Once more, Newcomer's Notebook appears, this time covering the whys and wherefores of the Wheatstone Bridge, a circuit widely used to measure all sorts of things, as Jules Perrin, VK3JFP, explains. In this issue, we reveal the theme for the first issue next year. It's contesting. This has been AR Magazine Editor-in-Chief Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH for VK1WIA News.
This is the home service of the Wireless Institute of Australia through VK1WIA. Now, international news with Jason, VK2LAW.
Hello. Leading international news this week from Region 1 comes news of a grant. Houth Martello Radio Group is very grateful to the IRTS for the grant of €800 from the Promoting Amateur Radio Fund, PAR. This will go a long way to enable the group to upgrade Echo India Zero Mike Alpha Romeo. The Martello QTH is in such an exposed coastal location that antennas take a battering from the weather, especially during winter months. Over the last several years, a commercial cobweb and an HF vertical antenna have been totally destroyed by the weather, and a new HF antenna is now on the shopping list. The shape of things to come. The November meeting of the Southeastern Amateur Radio Group in Ireland will be held on the 29th of November at 8 p.m. sharp, but the venue will only allow access to those who are fully vaccinated and produce their EU digital COVID certificate and valid photographic ID. In QRM news, a case of interference in the primary amateur radio 40-metre band by an AM broadcast station in Tashkent was speedily dealt with. There was an AM broadcast on 7160 kHz on the 22nd of October between 1800 and 1815 UTC. Due to the transmission power of the radio station and the breadth of the commercial A3E signal, there was considerable impairment of radio traffic in the 7155 to 7165 kHz range in large parts of Europe and the Middle East. Germany's Bandwatch contacted the company responsible, Media Broadcast, to investigate the cause. Media Broadcast said the mistake was made by a contracted relay station in Tashkent. The exact cause is still being investigated. The provider there had actually been commissioned by Media Broadcast to broadcast on 6040 kHz in the 49-metre shortwave radio band. We were assured that this was a one-off incident and apologised for the inconvenience. Disaster Airlift Response Team install new ham radio. The St Helena Star reports new amateur radio equipment has been installed by the Angwin Disaster Airlift Response Team, DART. The newspaper says the non-profit Angwin DART Disaster Airlift Response Team, a coalition of more than 20 volunteer pilots based at Angwin Parrot Airfield, has upgraded its radio system to allow for statewide communication during emergencies. The new 50-watt dual-band mobile ham radio base station links the Angwin Airport to each of California's other DART-operated airports. If internet and cell phone systems go down during a serious disaster, ham radios could be the only way to communicate disaster relief needs, said Marielle Coito-Britton, Kilo November 6, Delta Juliet Kilo, director of the Angwin DART. DART's mission is to fly goods or people in or out of devastated areas when ground transportation cannot do the job. For example, when roads are blocked by flooding, fire or earthquake damage. Going, sold. The New Zealand communications company Jackson & Wills, founded in 1947 by radio amateurs Douglas Jackson, Zulu Lima 4 Golf Mike, and Morris Wills, Zulu Lima 4 Golf Yankee, has been sold. The Southland Times newspaper reports an electronic business formed 74 years ago, which helped Southlanders keep up with the advancement of radios, phones and televisions, has a new owner. Jackson & Wills was opened by Douglas Jackson and Morris Wills in Invercargill in 1947, specialising in radio and electronics. Douglas and Morris were brought together by a shared enthusiasm for amateur radio following World War II. In 1956, Morris was reportedly the first person in New Zealand to view overseas international television during the Melbourne Olympics using frequencies announced by Australian television authorities. 2 years later, he was believed to have built one of the first complete television sets in New Zealand. Jackson & Wills had most recently been run by Morris's son Lindsay, who had worked at the business for the past 34 years. The biggest change in his 34 years in the business has been the transition from analogue to digital technology, which had opened up a whole new field for radio and telephones, Lindsay said. The business has been sold to Ashley Communications. For VK1WIA National News in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2LAW.
Now, operational news with Felix, VK4FUQ.
Hello there. Ham Radio Operational News. It's a contact sport. Spring VHF UHF Field Days November 27-28. CQ Worldwide CW Contest November 27-28. PLAR Group's 80 metre slow Morse corroboree on Sunday morning December the 4th. Times will be 2300 hours Zulu on December the 3rd until 0200 hours Zulu on December the 4th. That is 10 hours to 1300 hours Australian Eastern Daylight Time on December the 4th. Next week, Mark Bosma, VK6QI, will give us more info. December 4 and 5, 160 metres worldwide. December 11-12, 10 metres worldwide. 2022. January, the entire month every year, is the WIA Ross Hull VHF UHF Marathon Contest. Here's that contester of renown, Trent Sampson, VK4TS.
Greetings contest fans and VHF UHF enthusiasts in general. Well, here we are halfway through November, and that can only mean two things. The spring VHF UHF Field Day is on at the end of the month, and the Ross Hull contest is not that far away. The Ross Hull contest has always been promoted as a worldwide contest, and this year we've progressed that with multiple language translations of the contest rules and the addition of the term marathon to underline what the contest is about. In terms of marathons, you do not have to work the entire month of January, but just the best 7 days. Anyone can join in on the VHF and above bands, so keep an ear out and have fun in the running of the 2022 Ross Hull Marathon. This has been Trent, VK4TS.
DX Window. Crozier Island Expedition News. Because news such as this over the years, the 25 plus years we've been handling WIA National News, has a knack of going belly up. This may be the last you'll hear of it, but the Northern California DX Foundation is granting some 20,000 USDs to Thierry Mazel, EPSEC CUK, for the Crozier Island expedition planned for December 2022 through March 2023. Crozier Island is number 3 on Club Log's most wanted DX lists worldwide, and number 2 in North America. DX expeditions to rare entities like Crozier Island that are so remote are becoming more expensive and logistically more challenging, a trend that we believe will continue. Hopefully this experienced expedition operator can exploit this rare opportunity to access Crozier Island, put out an effective signal on all bands, and log all of the needy over the course of his extended stay. Ken, LA7GIA, the noted expeditioner, is operating from Bangui in the Central African Republic as TL7M until tomorrow, the 15th of November. He will be operating on all bands and all modes. According to the QRZ page for TL7M, he will also make the first activation of 60 metres in the Central African Republic under a special permit. Indian Special Event. For the 16th year, look for Special Event Station AU2JCB to be active between November the 19th and December the 15th on 86 metres SSB. Operations are to celebrate the 163rd anniversary of the birth, November 30, of Chandragis Bose, India's great scientist and inventor, who they consider to be the father of wireless communication. Happy and Holy Christmas. Special Dutch call signs for December-January. On the occasion of Christmas, Raymond, Wisjand and Ramona will activate 3 special call signs: PA21XMAS, PD21 Santa and PD22HNY. The 3 stations will be active from Wednesday, December the 1st to January 31, 2022, both on the more local, to them, 70 cm and 2 metre bands, and HF for DXs using SSB, FT4, FT8 and SSB. Radio amateurs who work these 2 Christmas stations are eligible for a certificate. OF9X, Old Father 9 Christmas. This Finnish station has excited many little radio operators and their families for many years from the land of Christmas. OF9X in December. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Felix, VK4FUQ.
From Australia, This is the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. Available on RF and on demand 24/7 from the wia.org.au website.
Media Watch and a 160 metre frequency change for this WIA national news. Note that the 160 metre rebroadcast by Graham VK7GS from Mount Roland in northwest VK7 is changing frequency down slightly to 1.862 MHz. This to avoid AM broadcast station intermods. Dick Smith VK2DIK has lived an adventurous and extraordinary life. He's a proud Australian, businessman, adventurer, entrepreneur, and he single-handedly changed electronics and the amateur radio and CB scene in Australia. Hayden VK7HH joins us now with news of a great interview coming your way.
Dick has recently released his autobiography titled Dick Smith, My Adventurous Life, and on Friday, November the 19th, at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, we're privileged to sit down live with Dick on the Ham Radio DX YouTube channel. We'll be speaking to him about his adventuring stories, including the first solo helicopter flight around the world, his business ventures, and his early days and interest in radio. Many of you listeners would have fond memories of walking into a Dick Smith Electronics to get the latest component for that project you are building. A Funway kit, or maybe just to drool over that new rig. Yes, this is the chance for all hams and electronic enthusiasts around Australia to say thanks to the legend that is Dick Smith. This is 73s from Hayden VK7HH for Ham Radio DX.
Who listens to radio? That go where you go, medium called radio.
Hi, this is Dick Smith, VK2DIK, and good morning to all the listeners of the VK1WIA broadcast. I wish you all the very best and look forward to maybe talking to you on the air. For the WIA National News broadcast, this is Dick Smith, VK2DIK.
That's all.
Now, special interest group news with Cole, VK3GTV.
Hello, and first up, it's Final Frontier. ARIS initiatives receive $1.3 million grant from ARDC. Education is one of the biggest engines driving the program known as Amateur Radio on the International Space Station, or ARIS. Now ARIS will have even more resources to educate youngsters interested in science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics, as well as the teachers who help them make that connection. A 5-year grant worth nearly $1.3 million has been awarded to ARIS USA from Amateur Radio Digital Communications. Some of the funds will help ARIS develop a wireless electronics technology kit, enabling middle and high school students to learn more about amateur radio. The grant will also help pay for educator workshops, so teachers can help students learn more from their use of the wireless kit. Finally, the grant will provide funding for contacts planned between students and astronauts during the 5-year period of the grant. Frank Bauer, KA3HDO, Executive Director of ARIS USA, called the grant a game changer, adding that it represents a key element of the ARIS 2.0 vision. Although having little, if any, pre-publication, an Australian school recently held an ARIS contact. Among the questions, and these are really good ones, do you think electromagnetic rockets would benefit space travel, and how far off are we from launching them? What is the most interesting thing that you've seen or experienced in space? As experts on space exploration, do you think space exploration is a good idea? And do you think space tourism is a good idea? Does food taste different in space? And can you describe the difference? What was it like when you saw Earth from space for the first time? Yeah, some great questions there. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, IOTA, AN017, Various Adeli Land Group. David F4FKT has arrived on Antarctica and plans to operate from various locations during his spare time. FT4YM, Base Dumont Deville, Petrels Island, Antarctica. FT4YM Portable, Base Concordia, Antarctica. FT4YM Portable, Base Little Dome C, Antarctica. FT4YM Portable, Base Cape Prudhomme, Antarctica. QRV mostly on 40 and 20 metres SSB. He stays until the beginning of March 2022 and QSL via F5 PFP. Worldwide Special Interest Group, Maritime. Pearl Harbor Day Memorial Special Event. With operating authorization from the Navy's 3rd Fleet Spectrum Manager, the Battleship Iowa Amateur Radio Association, BIARA Incorporated, and the Iowa's Innovation and Engineering Team will activate the ship's legacy Navy call sign NEPM December 7 in memory of Pearl Harbor Day. Operation will be between 1600 and 2359 UTC. NEPM will transmit on 14781.5 kHz using J3E upper sideband and listen on 14343 kHz J3E upper sideband. Amateurs are reminded that they may not transmit on 14781.5 kHz. If there's traffic on 143.3 kHz, the NEPM operator will advise of an alternate frequency where he's listening. QSLs will be available if an SASE is provided. SEPM, NI6BB, or NE6PM are all listed on QRZ.com, and any route will get your request to the QSL manager. Visit BIARA's website at biara.org for more information about radio operations aboard the battleship Iowa, soon to be the home of the National Museum of the Surface Navy. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Digital. Barrick presents M17.
Hi, I'm Graham, VK3GRK in Bendigo, presenting M17, a new digital mode. Bendigo Amateur Radio Electronics Club invites you to our November meeting, where Barrick member Tony Langdon, VK3IRL, will provide an interesting presentation and live demonstration of the new digital mode M17. M17 is a new amateur radio VHF, UHF digital voice and data mode under active development. M17 is 100% open source and developed by amateurs. Tony will cover the origins of M17, some of the key features, and how club members can get on M17 today. Bendigo is now one of the few places in the world, and probably the only place in VK, with M17 infrastructure. The presentation commences at 7:30pm, Friday, November 19th, at Barrick Headquarters, Bendigo East Hall, 35 Lancel Street. The presentation will also be streamed on the Barrick YouTube channel.
Thanks, Graham. See you there. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Medical. Canadian Special Event. Look for Special Event Station VX3 Insulin from Ontario to be active between December 1st and 31st. Activity is to mark the 100th anniversary of a Canadian team at the University of Toronto's discovery of insulin in the summer of 1921. Operations will be primarily digital, with FT8 and FT4 the dominant modes of use. QSL via VE3NOO. To Belgium now, and Special Event Station OT5IDPD is QRV until December 3rd to commemorate International Day of Persons with Disabilities that takes place on December 3rd. Activity is on the HF bands, and you can QSL via ON6WL. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, YOTA, Youngsters on the Air. YOTA Month 2021. Felix made mention of this a little earlier, so do listen out for the RSGB arranged call sign GB21 YOTA. They've set this call for allocation to youngsters to operate throughout December. 3 C's across the sea. 3 6th grade students, Carter, KF0FYO, Carrie, KF0FYS, and Cora, KF0FYR, all whose names start with the letter C, along with their teacher, Ravi Davis, KF0FYL, whose name obviously doesn't start with C, received their ham radio licenses this past summer. Ravi said their first out-of-country contact was with a group of middle school students from County Kent in England, and added they hope to establish a regular pen-pal relationship between their STEM students and our STEAM students to share and collaborate in ongoing global challenges and investigations throughout the year, truly connecting ourselves to the rest of the world. Sounds like a plan to me. I'll catch you next time. Till then, stay safe. I'm Cole, VK3GTV.
Wrapping up this WIA national news for week commencing November 14. Social scene, Gold Coast Amateur Radio Society Hamfest. It happens Sunday the 21st of November. It happens at the Country Paradise Parklands, 231 Beaudesert Nerang Road at Nerang. The Gold Coast Hamfest 2021, Sunday the 21st. Till next we meet, I'm Graham, VK4 Baker Baker. Walk softly.
From Australia, this has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5 BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
The active region that gave us that massive solar storm back on the 4th is finally rotating to the sun's far side. But before it goes, it fires off one more big flare to say goodbye. That story and more in the news this week. This space weather forecast is sponsored in part by Millersville University. Come get certified in broadcast space weather. Visit millersville.edu/SWEN. Space weather this week is definitely quieted down compared to all the fireworks we had last week with all the solar flares and that big solar storm that was Earth-directed. As we take a look at the Earth-facing disk, we still see 4 regions on the Earth-facing disk, including region 2891 that's beginning to rotate off of the sun's west limb. This is the region that launched that massive solar storm that gave us that big G3 level impact at Earth and brought Aurora clear down to places like Wyoming and Utah and Nevada and Joshua Tree, California, for goodness sake. It was amazing to see all that aurora. But really the region that we're looking at right now is region 2895, and that's showing a little bit of activity. We've got about a 5% chance of M-class flares. But look at this, back on the 9th, whammo! That's region 2891 giving us one more kind of kiss goodbye with an M2 class flare and a big solar storm. Luckily, this solar storm is not Earth directed. In fact, this region is actually occulted, so likely that flare was much larger than an M2. Could even have been an X-class, especially when we look at the coronagraph observations that show how fast that big solar storm is being launched. So it definitely could be a much bigger game on the sun's far side, and we'll have to wait for another 2 weeks for that region to rotate back into view, but we're definitely going to be anticipating it. Meanwhile, outside of that, we don't have all that much going on. We do have a bit of a coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone over the next couple days. It's going to give us just a little bit of fast solar wind, but probably only enough to give us some storming, small amount of storming over the weekend at high latitudes. Outside of that, we're really not looking too good. And in fact, as we switch to the far side of the sun, this is stereo A and it's looking at the sun pretty much from the side. You can see those regions are really the only players on the disk right now. In the south, we do have a coronal hole that's going to be rotating into Earth view. It's not quite showing all up much yet in Earth view, but that could give us some more storming in about 10 days or so. And then we might have a couple regions that are going to rotate into Earth view here in a few more days, and those could boost that solar flux because we're actually sitting in the mid-80s for solar flux, which means marginal radio propagation on Earth's day side. Switching to our moon, we are now passing through the second quarter on our way to a full moon, and by the 15th, the moon will be about 87% illuminated. So you night sky watchers, if you want to catch those dim objects in the sky, you're going to have this bright companion to deal with, so please check your local rise and set times. Switching to our solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating a little bit of fast solar wind from that coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone. It's really the polar coronal hole, kind of an extension of it from the south, we believe, and that should give us some fast solar wind, but it's not going to be all that strong. So at high latitudes, NOAA is expecting active conditions, but we do have up to about a 25% chance of minor storm conditions in through the weekend. Now, mid-latitudes, it's not going to be nearly as dramatic. We really are expecting unsettled conditions, but we do have up to about a 15% chance of active conditions for a couple days, but likely aurora photographers, if you're at mid-latitude, you're going to have to sit this one out because it's probably going to be pretty fleeting if you catch any aurora at all. Switching to our solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, believe it or not, we're not totally in the green this week. We do have a small risk for M-class flares, and this is due to region 2895, which is one of 3 regions on the Earth-facing disk right now. NOAA's given us about a 5% chance of M-class flares, so you GPS operators on Earth's day side, be vigilant. We might have a chance for radio blackouts, although it's a pretty small one. Meanwhile, we've really kind of quieted down when it comes to solar flux. We're sitting in the high 80s right now, moving into the mid 80s, and likely it's going to stay like that easily through the end of this week and into next week before we start seeing more regions rotate into view that could actually boost that solar flux back up again. So amateur radio operators and emergency responders expect marginal radio propagation on Earth's day side. Now also, because we had that big M-class flare from region 2891 as it began to rotate off of the west limb, believe it or not, it also launched a radiation storm. So we're at elevated levels right now, but we're really dying off very quickly. We're not even in an official radiation storm, so don't worry about it too much. But you frequent flyers, and this does include air crew who are flying over 800 hours annually and flying at high latitudes and high altitudes, you are going to be in a moderate range for radiation dose risk, and that's going to include the prenatal passengers. So please take this into consideration in your flight plans. So the space weather this week is definitely calmed down compared to the fireworks of last week, especially with region 2891 now rotating to the sun's far side. All we have this week is kind of a small pocket of fast solar wind that will give us maybe a little bit of storming at high latitudes. So Aurora photographers, if you're at high latitudes, you could get a bit of a show, but you photographers at mid latitudes, you're likely going to need to sit this one out and wait for something bigger that might come in about a week or so. Now also, amateur radio operators and emergency responders, you're probably noticing there's a lot less noise on the bands with all the big M-flare players going away. But then again, also the solar flux has dropped a little bit. So radio propagation may not be quite as good for you. We're kind of sitting at the marginal range, and sadly, that's the way it's going to be for the rest of this week. Now, GPS users, well, you know, things are looking better finally. We don't have any more big solar storms headed toward Earth, and solar flux has dropped a little bit. So, you know, you might actually be getting some decent reception again, even at low latitudes and on Earth's night side. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.